Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will plan for today. By the way, SEC Media Days attendee list just dropped right before we started recording. I am not going to dig into that because if you actually care about the media attendee list in a way that's more than just, oh, this guy isn't going to be here, that guy isn't going to be here, you care about it probably more than I do. If
Are
I'm
we
being
on
100%
it?
honest. We're not on the player invitee list,
I
despite the
thought
fact
I was
that
gonna get a walk-up song. Man, I gotta change out some. I gotta re-prepare.
both of us had 4 years of eligibility left.
Right.
I'm just saying, would be great faces of a program.
Mm-hmm.
Some would say, not a face for radio, a face for video podcasting. I'm, I'm just saying, extend the offer, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy to make an appearance instead of, bringing kickers there and doing stuff like that. Kickers are important too. Okay, don't get too worked up. But yes, we're not going to dig into that list. We're going to have a ton of media days coverage next week, so we're going to be talking about all those
Mm-hmm.
different takeaways and whatnot. But if you're wondering why we're not talking about that, it's because I don't think it's that interesting of
Yeah.
a subject. The interesting things we will be discussing today, we have Josh Snead coming up, who is somebody that I've been a fan of for a really, really long time. And if you have been on YouTube and you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you've seen SEC Shorts, which is just such a staple of SEC culture. So got into kind of the roots of that, how it's become such a mainstay for all of us. And then we're going to close with Lad of the Week. But first, Will, something that I don't think we've done a whole lot of this offseason, but um, we have a Georgia heavy pod today, a Georgia heavy pod. Do we talk too much Georgia? Do you think that we do? Because I always debate this in my head if I talk enough Georgia, and then I realize that by November and December, it dominates conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of covering your bases, right? Because it was Alabama, then it was Georgia and Alabama. Now we're just not really sure what Alabama is, so it's two different stories. So I think, if you win, they talk about you, right? And if Georgia was winning two games, we'd be talking about them just as much, I feel. So that's the way I view it, is that, okay, Georgia winning 9, 10 games, not as interesting, but Georgia pushing for 13 to 15 or two, same as Alabama, it'd be pretty interesting.
That's true. That's a good point. And it kind of feeds into our discussion today as Georgia continues this chase for history, emphasis on the word continue,
Mm-hmm.
because by the time that we are talking next week at SEC Media Days, we will be there together for the first time, which how is that possible that this will be the first time that we are at SEC Media Days together, you and I? Man, that's
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's crazy. Yeah, I went a couple of times early in my SDS career. I remember I famously got a picture of Les Miles during his last year. But yeah, I think I've only been like technically I don't think I've been on the list. That's the thing. I got some like stuff around the happenings, the goings on with Marler, but to be like officially included, I think there's only been one outside of this one.
credentialed Will Ogburn. Love to see
Mm-hmm.
it. Love to see it. Looking forward to it. What always happens at SEC Media Days, it becomes a hotbed for predictions. Of course, we do order finish in the SEC. We talk breakout candidates, bowl predictions, etc. All that stuff. Some might like to predict a national champ. That's also a popular thing to do. I expect to hear some people predict that Georgia will win a national championship, and perhaps somewhat nonchalantly, I think they'll do it because, again, just like Alabama in its heyday, it doesn't really look like you're going out on a limb. You're talking about a preseason favorite, likely the preseason number one team in the country. Saying that that team's going to win a title doesn't really feel like it's that bold. The people that would say that it's not that bold would probably fail to mention the stat I always reference about how 18 of the 19 last preseason AP number one teams have failed to win a national title, with 2017 Alabama being the lone exception to the rule. But you will hear people say, yeah, Georgia winning a national championship. You'll hear Georgia players and coaches talking about, yeah, it's, we're focused on blah, blah, blah. But, our goal is always to win a national championship. But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I feel like because Georgia didn't three-peat, it almost seemed as if, you know what, we're kind of starting over with the legacy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is a new era with Georgia. They didn't three-peat, so now we're kind of moving on to the next feat as they try and tackle the 12-team playoff. And look, for Georgia internally, yeah, it's one season, one game at a time, that one play at a time, all those different cliche things. Totally get it from that perspective. They're not talking about legacy. They're not talking about what they're doing in a 4-year stretch. I get that. But for all those people like us on the outside looking in at what they have done, I think there should be a different approach. I do. There are a ton of historical hurdles for Georgia to overcome as it tries to win 3 titles in 4 years. For starters, you should already know the stat that I referenced with Brooks Austin a few months ago, talking about how the only coaches in the last 70 years of organized American tackle football who have won 3 titles in 4 years. Tom Osborne, Nick Saban. You might have heard of them. For a lot of us, you're probably, yeah, you're too young. I think I'm the cutoff, the youngest that you can be to say that you remembered both of those 2 dynasties.
I certainly don't remember the first. I'll be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were born in 94, correct?
Yep.
Born in 94, the first year that Nebraska won 3 of 4. So that makes perfect sense. You would have remembered 1997, great Heisman race in 97. That was just a distant memory for, not even a memory, but something that was never processed by a young Will Ogburn. That's kind of the way that a lot of people, I think my age, look at it as, okay, well, we've seen dynasties in college football in recent memory. If we can remember it, then it feels a bit more real to us. And maybe 3 and 4 doesn't sound quite as impressive just because it's been done, and it's been done in this conference. It's been done even in the last 15 years. Even if you're a younger college football fan, you probably remember Bama in 09, 11, and 12. Look,
unfortunately,
well, I didn't mean to go there. I was just going to breeze right past that for you. Didn't mean to talk about a very sore subject still, but it's an unbelievable accomplishment. It truly is. That was also a time, 94, 95, 97. It was a time before we did the whole, having a game to decide a national title that was actually called the national championship. Amazing. Again, we forget these things. Alabama's 3 and 4 was also pre having a playoff to decide a national championship. Okay, you know that. You didn't need me to remind you of that. Some would say that makes Georgia's path to get to a national championship easier because they have the playoff, the crutch of the playoff. Those people, purists, of course, they would conveniently leave out the fact that last year, Georgia got left out of the final year of the 14 playoff, despite the fact that they went 12 and 1. So just point worth remembering. To win it all in the 12-team playoff, some will say that it'll be easier because the entry to get into the 12-team playoff is easier.
Hold on, you're telling me that one head-to-head loss against that team should... Okay, interesting. Just making sure. So when Georgia loses that game, they're out of the 4-team playoff. And when Alabama loses that game, they're in a 2-team beat. Okay, yes, okay, got it.
Different years, Will.
Yeah,
different years.
Yeah, because now it's easier. When Bama did it was harder. Correct. Yes. Okay.
I respect your unbiased opinion on this.
Well, I'm thinking about it, like, why but it is kind of funny to go, yeah, it used to be harder to make this, but then you literally just gave data of how Georgia did the exact same thing that Bama did, and they got left out, and Bama was put in. So actually, I'll give Georgia credit on that.
Just depends on the year. Exactly. Yeah. A BCS apologist would never bring up the point that you just did, but it is indeed true.
Yeah.
But if Georgia is 10 and 2, 9 and 3, and then wins it all, okay, that's fine. Let's talk about how the ability to get into the 12-team playoff is definitely easier, and it benefited Georgia. And maybe you're going to look at this title a little bit differently than you would one of those teams who had, all those Nebraska teams were undefeated. Not all those Alabama teams were undefeated. 09 was undefeated. But still, nonetheless, the point that I'm getting to. And look, if Georgia goes 12 and 0, 12 and 1, 13 and 0, if that's what we're talking about here, though, like going into the SEC championship, coming out of the SEC championship, that's where that argument of this was easier that's where that stops. Because if Georgia wins it all with a regular season like that, like after that happens, they will
Mm-hmm.
still need to beat in the college football playoff at least three more top 12 teams to win it all. And remember, that's also getting through this new version of the 16 team SEC, which might have 5 or 6 preseason top 10 teams. It's looking like maybe probably 5 in the top 10, 6 in the top 12, just kind of depending on the way that's going to shake out. But you get it. The SEC still confirmed good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia is traveling for true road games against 3 of those teams. 3 of the teams that I think will absolutely be in that preseason top 5, okay? Because they're obviously going on the road to Texas, they're going on the road to Bama, and they're going on the road to Ole Miss. That doesn't include the season opener against the coach that's responsible for 40% of the rings won by active coaches in the sport. Clemson, Dabo Swinney, might have heard of him.
As he'll
Um,
tell you.
yeah, as he will tell you. And Georgia's a significant favorite in that one, as it should be. It's being considered like a Georgia home game. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm penciling in Georgia to win that game. Yet, I will admit, even as someone that tries to look at this stuff objectively, I really do. I look at Georgia's schedule and I still kind of scoff at it. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw someone in this business who will remain nameless. They will continue to remain nameless. I saw someone leave Georgia out of the playoff, and it took everything in me not to respond because of how crazy that is to process. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of getting into this fight on Twitter and what's really the point of that. No, thank you. They were saying, well, lose at Bama, lose at Texas, and then just find another loss for them. You don't just find another loss for a program that's won 39 consecutive regular season games with just 2 losses in the last 3 seasons, both of which were to the greatest coach in the history of this sport on a neutral site. Okay. Georgia has gotten to the place that, as you mentioned before, Bama was once at, where you never, ever looked at those Bama schedules and said, that's one of the toughest in the country. You never did that because, yeah, it's hard to be totally. You try and look at it subjectively, and you end up being a bit objective about it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Georgia is being tasked with going on the road against possibly 3 top 10 teams before it plays as many as 4 neutral site games against likely top 12 teams to close the season. Because I'm including the SEC championship in that as a neutral site game, I assume that whoever Georgia would face in an SEC championship would also be a top 12 team. You get what I'm saying? When Nebraska won 3 in 4 years, how many times total in those 3 title seasons did they travel for a top 10 road matchup in the regular season?
Huh. How many times? So they would have been. I should know this. They were in the
Big 8,
Big Eight at the time. Man, so that would have
Big
been.
12? Big 12 one
Yeah,
is just started. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So like that's the real question, right? So I'm gonna say over the course of those 3 years, let's say. Wait. Sorry, one more qualifier. Neutral site counts or no? Is it
Mm-mm.
true road environment?
True road games,
Oh
AP
man,
top 10 teams.
I'm gonna say 2.
3. Close.
3 was my initial guess too. I thought that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same as like what Georgia could project to have this year. Again, things will play out. We'll see if those teams are going to be in the top 10 at the time of the matchup. When Alabama went 3 and 4, 09, 11, and 12, how many times total did they travel for a top 10 road matchup during the regular season in the almighty SEC, in the midst of that 7 consecutive titles, in the midst of this run of dominance for the SEC, in which it felt like, man, every week is the Super Bowl? How many times do you think Bama had these true road games against AP top 10 teams during that stretch?
I'm gonna say based on that context 5.
Uno.
Oh my gosh.
1. And I guess we're excluding 2010 because that wasn't a title season. But in those 3 title seasons, once, and it was 2012 at number 5 LSU. Shout out TJ Yeldon for that one. Sorry, I didn't choose violence. Not the point of today's discussion, Will. Not the point. Just the direction we ended up in. And yet, because it's Georgia, the Dogs can go 2-1 in those games. Let's say that happens at Texas, at Bama, at Ole Miss. Let's say Georgia goes 2-1 in those games, and some will wonder what's wrong. That's the crazy standard that Kirby Smart has created, and deserves all the credit in the world for that. You have to find another loss. You have to find a weakness. I've been asked that question a few times this offseason because that's what we try to do with teams that are going to be competing for a national championship. Just like last year when I talked about the Bobo stuff a lot, and I thought that was going to be a potential deterrent for Georgia winning a national championship. I've said with this team, maybe the non-Malachi Starks pieces of the secondary, that could be an issue. And then I remind myself, it's still Kirby Smart working with blue chip talent. That combination is usually all you need, and it usually works itself out just fine. I've said, I don't know if there's like a true alpha in that receiver room who's going to kind of step up and be the guy that Carson Beck can unconditionally turn to in those tight spots. But then I'm reminded how much depth there is and how much I really love how they can go 5-6 deep. And I think to myself, yeah, we're saying that now, but that could be very, very different by mid-October, especially if you have a lot of different potential options for it who can establish themselves. Anytime I search for the flaws on Georgia's roster, I struggle. It's a difficult question to answer. And I think it's natural to be like, well, when you can just buy recruiting classes like Kirby does, you can do that sort of thing. And of course, you don't have any weaknesses. It's a 5-star factory, and you can do this, this, and this, and you should never have to worry about if you can, if you're not having the advantage with a specific position group. It helps, but explain why Georgia feels like the team that just has fewer and fewer question marks every year when they know in this era their depth is going to be hit in the portal. It's just going to happen. I went back and looked at like each of the 4 years of the portal cycle to see what their net was, because that's always interesting to me. Like, imports versus exports in the portal era. Something that a lot of people were like, Deion Sanders lost 35 people to the portal. They're like, he also brought in like 42. They like to leave that out. Georgia lost 24 guys in the portal this cycle and brought in 11, which is easily more than they've ever brought in before. One of whom was a long snapper, another was a kicker. So pretty light portal class, relatively speaking, compared to what a lot of programs bring in. And when you lose 24 guys, that's very significant. The previous year, Georgia lost 16 in the portal, only brought in 4. Year before that, lost 13 in the portal, only brought in 1. And then in the first year of the portal, they lost 14 and they gained 3. Kirby's portal is his net is minus double digits every single year.
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, I'm not going to do the whole like that's why college football is so much harder to coach in now compared to 25 years ago, because you can also have like a million support staff and you're compensated in a totally different way. And I'm not going to really dig into that. But I will say that it's truly remarkable to think that Kirby is trying to win a title for the third time in 4 years with a roster that has such few flaws, at least as we look at it sitting here in early July. 33 players drafted in the last 3 years after title number 1. To repeat that, to win a national championship after losing 15 players in the NFL draft, you've heard me say this countless times if you listen to the show, but to do that after losing 15 players to the NFL draft is absurd. And to think that that middle title, if this is indeed 3 out of 4, that middle title in 22 could actually be kind of lost in the shuffle because of the way that the national championship played out with 65-7. That's absurd to think about as well. To predict a Georgia title is to predict history. It's saying that they're about to continue this run that's among the most impressive we've ever seen in the post-integration history of this sport. It's saying, yeah, I know that there are some easy paths to winning it all, and maybe Georgia is going to follow an easier path by going 10-2 and not playing in an SEC championship, and they win 4 in a row in the playoff or something like that. But depending on how you get out of the regular season and into the playoff, we might be talking about one of the most battle-tested teams in the history of this sport, maybe the single most battle-tested team if it is another regular season of dominance for Georgia. To predict a Georgia national title is to say, I don't care that preseason number ones have a kiss of death in the last couple of decades with the whole internet being a thing. Connor, that stat is bogus. I do not care about it. So it begs the question, can I acknowledge all of those things and predict that Georgia will win a national championship in the year of our Lord 2024? Yes, I can, Will. Yes, I can. I'm picking Georgia to win a national championship. I'm predicting history. I think that happens with not one, not two, but three matchups against Texas. Texas wins the first one in Austin. Everybody pays out of the second mortgage of their house to be able to go to that game. Georgia wins the second one in Atlanta. Georgia wins the third one in Atlanta, the national championship. I believe that Georgia is ready for history. Any pushback?
I think you're right on the money here, right? Yeah, it's funny how often, I don't think I've said this, but how often I'm looking for a very specific thing and I end up finding that specific thing written by Brad Crawford. So I just want to
We
shout him
love
out
Brad.
yet again. He literally, it's like he reads my mind and then writes that article. So I'm reading his like I was like, oh, I got to find the most recent way too early top 25 that I can from someone I respect. It's Brad. It was late April, which was post spring. So, okay, now we're cooking, right? And I'm looking up and down here. He has Ohio State ranked 1, which is what I'm seeing lots of places, right? And it's like, okay, let's just take that one out for a second. I'm going to compare Georgia to every other team in this tier with them, right? So let me just take a quick step back. So what's so funny about Georgia is that what you just said is so accurate, right? Which is that they could go 2-1 in road top 10 matchups, which no team has really done, and it'd be a disappointment, right? So Georgia has found themselves stuck in this weird neutral gear where they're getting the same criticism that Alabama got, but to the point I was just making, they don't quite have that A on the side of their helmet, do they? Or not that side of the helmet, the logo. They don't have the, because and you call me a homer or whatever, but it is pretty funny when you think to yourself, okay, yeah, Georgia was the team that was left out last year, right? And when you really put that in context, oh, Alabama lost at home to LSU, and they were given a chance to avenge themselves pre-playoff. A chance that Georgia never would have gotten because we saw, again, pretty close to the same thing. I know years are different. I'm here to tell you right now, if Georgia had lost at home to LSU in 2011, they would have not gotten a second chance. And if Alabama had beaten Georgia in the SEC championship game, they would have. And we've seen it. It happened last time they played the championship game. So all I'm saying is when you look at these teams around Georgia in this way too early, who has even come close to proving that they're worth it, what Georgia is, right? Ohio State, all they have done is lost to Georgia and every other team that matters, including Mizzou. They can't even beat Mizzou, and yet people. And again, I'm not dumping on Brad because he's right. This is probably how this is going to end up looking, right? He's doing a great job at his job, which is to not give his opinion, but to kind of get everything together, right? So Georgia is number 2, Texas at number 3. As you've said, saying Texas is back already is so funny to me because they have just won. They have achieved winning the Big 12. Congratulations, man. Boom, Oregon. They have 0 recent national titles. They have 0 national titles, period. It's really not, again, they have a 60,000 seat stadium and they can't beat Washington. And they're hoping the war just leaves them alone forever. Alabama, they lost the greatest coach of all time. Ole Miss, they are Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin is their coach. Michigan, they lost everything. Like, it's really funny to just go through this list. Like, with Mizzou is at number 8 here. Again, love Mizzou. There's just a level of separation here between what we trust Georgia to do. Because what I was going to make the point of is, we've been drawn to picking Alabama and or Georgia because it's not about being right. It's about not being wrong when you're doing preseason predictions. And that's something I'll give you is you've gone out on limbs that a lot of people haven't. But Georgia still, weirdly, feels like they're not this safe pick to just continue to do what they've done. Because what has Georgia struggled at? Okay, let's be the devil's advocate hater here. They got smacked by LSU twice when Joe Burrow was there. He's not coming back, neither was Coach O. They are 1-0 since Joe Burrow graduated against LSU, right? So still technically a losing record, but whatever. Nick Saban. Can't consistently beat Nick Saban. Well, he's going to be playing golf. So again, who are the natural predators of Georgia in this ecosystem? Not really anyone, right? Because until there is a team like Alabama did, like Joe Burrow did, that consistently can expose you and make you play this scared brand of football that Kirby Smart has played when he's lost, like that South Carolina game is not happening again, okay? Like the way of, oh, we are scared to play a talented quarterback and make plays downfield. They hired Mike Bobo and continued to be good. Like that mistake has already been made and it looked great. And yeah, okay, you could talk about a snap went this way in the SEC championship game, but Georgia is fully aware that they're going to have to prove themselves probably more because they're not Alabama. And I think that's become their fuel, because at the end of the day, we could all talk about the standard is the standard, da 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 da. But Kirby Smart hasn't even gotten to the point of his career where he's wearing a suit talking about get me in the playoff, because they know what the expectation is, right? They know that they're going to have to continue to prove themselves, because what I think that people did was they want to crown the new champion, right? Just like we wanted to crown Dabo over Saban, just like we wanted to crown Kirby the one time he beat Saban. But then as Saban stuck around, it was like, wait, this is the only guy we can safely put our money in. This is like the bond market, right? So now that he's gone, that team is Georgia. Like, it's just so clearly Georgia. If the only thing you could struggle with was Nick Saban and Joe Burrow, you're probably just a great team.
True. The only thing I disagree with what you just said is Kirby has definitely put on a suit and been like, you need to put Georgia in the 14 playoff. Did it last year, and he did it in 18 as well after losing to Alabama.
But that's a scheduled part of the Nick Saban experience, or has been for the last 4 or 5 years, which is that he knows he can get in the playoff. It's not working for Kirby. So Saban's last line of defense is putting on the blue suit, shaking hands, making jokes. That doesn't work for Kirby Smart. We've just seen it.
Yeah, 22 with Saban making that case and then continuing to make it. It was like, all right, what are we doing here? I hated that. I thought it was one of the worst arguments I've seen when, their best win was against a 4-loss team, Ole Miss or Mississippi State, like take your pick. But I think that you brought up something that's interesting of like, who's the team that can stare Georgia down and actually be a threat to what they're continuing to try and accomplish. Mm-hmm. And I think after that game in Austin, people will say it's Texas's time. This is what it's going to be moving forward. Texas is the new standard. And I'm not necessarily one of those people that's like they're about to fall off the face of the earth, because I've said I've got Texas going 12-0 in the regular season. Okay,
right,
12-0. Believe that they will get into the college football playoff, and I believe that they will have a say in who wins a national championship. I just told you I think they're getting to a national championship and losing to Georgia. Mm-hmm. But if you're asking me, well, how do I think Kirby Smart's going to respond to that? I'm not thinking twice. Okay? As long as it ain't Saban. That's all I care about. Now, if it's Saban and you're telling me how does he have to respond? I know he did it in 21. I know he responded to that SEC championship loss and beat Saban and got the last laugh. I fully acknowledge that, and I'm not taking that away from Kirby. It's an important part of his legacy and what he has built. Mm-hmm. But if it were Saban, and if that was the guy that you had to get the last laugh against, we would all have questions. Right. There is no more of that left where I would feel like, oh, I'm going to bet this coach is actually going to make the right adjustments against Kirby Smart. That's why he's number one in the sport. That's why he's the number one coach in the sport, and there should not be a second question about it. I think that if you are looking at the way that plays out against Texas and you think to yourself, well, there's a team that can go out and beat Georgia, I'll say, yeah, that's fine. They did just do that, if that's indeed what we're talking about. But do I think that that's going to be the case and it's going to prevent Georgia from winning a title? I don't. Because I've now gotten so far past the what's Kirby going to do to mess up his own chance narrative that I would much rather have this discussion instead of, wow, they actually have a chance to kind of quietly go about a pursuit of a national championship and a pursuit of history. And that's the greatest thing you could do as a college football coach. When history feels imminent or expected, that is a sign that you have totally turned around how we talk about you and what the new standard is for the sport. And so I bring that up today because I think the bold thing to do is going to be saying that, oh, Georgia, isn't going to win a national title. And I don't know that anybody's going to be able to explain that with anything, but it's just kind of a bold prediction that I'm going to throw out there. Look, I'm preaching to people who probably know or remember when 2 years ago I get to SEC Media Days and I'm like, I think Tennessee beats Georgia this year. And it was something that I wore, and I said up until that, like even leading up to that matchup, I still think Tennessee wins. Tennessee was number one in the country at the time, and I still had that moment. And Marler always talks about this. When that ball is kicked, man, all that talking goes out the window. And nobody has been able to embody that quite like Georgia. And it's why I wanted to be able to discuss this today, because it's the season of bold. It is talking season. It's all over the place. There is nothing wrong with sitting here and saying, I think Georgia's about to make history. And I don't care that it's not three-peat. That would have been incredible. 3-4 is freaking incredible. And I think that happens this year.
I'm looking at this right now, man, and how many? Just I don't know if you know this. I'm pretty sure I got the answer here. Do you know how many active coaches have beaten Kirby Smart?
Active at their current job is 0.
Yep.
That I know
Yep.
because Tom Herman's at FAU. Gus Malzahn is at UCF. And then Will Muschamp is no longer in there. Ed Odron no longer there. Yeah, Nick Saban retired. Yep, that's the breakdown. Dan Mullen not coaching.
Not coaching.
Yeah,
yep. That was the point I was getting. It's all like Saban, like you said, Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, but then he went to Auburn. Paul Johnson before he retired beat him once. So there's
Derek Mason at
Vandy.
He's at East Tennessee. Yeah, he's at East Tennessee. Took over for I think Rick Stockstill. Yeah, I think he was there for like 17, 18 years. So yeah, 0.
Yeah, so there's just no one has beaten Kirby Smart. So like that's kind of where I'm at. I'm saying this to follow up exactly what you're saying, which is that how can you not rank this team number 1? Because again, it's one of those that it's like, okay, well, if you're walking down the left side of the street at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, this bad thing happens to you. It's like, what if you just don't do that? And it's like, that's exactly what playing Nick Saban is right now. It's like, okay, well, if Saban unretires and takes over Ohio State, then we're having a different conversation. If Urban Meyer unretired, maybe that's a different conversation. If we're going to sit here and go, yeah, I think we need to we need to say Texas has passed them. Because now that I think about it, I know probably Bama fans are like screaming at their radio if people still do that and be like, hey, well, yeah, duh. Georgia had the benefit of that going into last year's SEC championship game, and then Bama proved them wrong. Correct. Again, where's Nick Saban? Not coaching anymore. So if it was against Bama, this would be a whole other conversation. Luckily, the ongoing joke is the bully graduating. The bully is graduated. Joe Burrow is not coming back. Nick Saban is not coming back. There is not a single guy who you're worried about. Just don't schedule UCF. Just don't do it.
Do it. I wouldn't be worried about Gus if I'm a Georgia fan.
I would always be worried about Gus once.
He got his one.
That's what I was going to say is just don't schedule UCF, and Hugh Freeze just got, again, you almost got that last year. Just try to get him at home. it's same deal. So like that's my thing is like, it should be talked about completely differently. I know it's hard when you want to change your opinion on stuff and then something like the SC championship game happens. But again, it's just pointless data because if that had been Brian Kelly beating him that way, it'd be like, well, now there's a new king on the block. Oh, look at this. They're 1-1. No, it's the fact that none of this stuff matters, right? So like before we go to jump onto the next fun thing, like I said, the point that we made with Dabo, we wanted to put Nick Saban in the dirt, crown Dabo. We watched older Nick Saban out-evolve younger Dabo, and it went, we all were wrong. Kind of same deal here. If Texas wins once or even twice, I'm not ready to give them a three-peat chase the way that Georgia has been doing until outside of the regular season. I think that when you've done that, you can be treated like a team that can beat Georgia consistently, because when Texas beat Alabama, nobody said, well, it's futures now, old man. It was like, well, they kind of got one, and that's how it should be viewed the same way.
Kirby's last postseason loss. We're talking just bowl games here.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Herman, Texas is back.
Yep.
That's it's hard to ignore, and it doesn't guarantee that he just wins every bowl game for the rest of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll take that. I'll bet with it. I don't care if that means that it's not bold. Some will say that's a cop-out answer. I just laid out that history to show you why it's actually not a cop-out answer, because this is incredibly hard what Georgia is trying to do. Winning 3 in a lifetime is a difficult feat for a college football coach to accomplish. It's why I said if Kirby does it this year, Kirby's on my Mount Rushmore of greatest coaches of all time. He joins Bear, he joins Osborne, he joins Saban. Okay, he passes up Switzer and Spurrier and all those different guys who have been so good and so respected for so long. But just because we've seen this in recent memory with Saban, or it has elements of Saban to it, the binders notwithstanding, that are all too similar, it doesn't minimize it. It at least shouldn't. So, again, I think that context is worth remembering as this season begins. And look, new era, same Georgia. Yeah, same Georgia. Don't care.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. And that we talked about it doing kind of the legacy update, right? Which is that, hey, Actually, it is kind of more impressive to win in the super conference, right? It is because you can kind of, avoid teams. You can kind of, not have to play a team twice, right? Usually it's how it was supposed to work. And it's like, no, like now, if you beat a team, like let's say that Alabama just becomes a powerhouse under DeBoer, beating them once is not going to be enough anymore. You're going to have to beat them once and then see them again. And then to your point, maybe see them a third time. And you just got to get used to an NFL style schedule. And I think it's a big deal because, again, in 2019, when LSU beat Nick Saban, we were all rooting for Auburn because we didn't want to go see Alabama again because we already beat them, right? And that's the key is that old college football, you beat the boss and you moved on to the next stage. Now it's like, well, you better not, like we joked about, you better go fish those goalposts up out of the river, Tennessee, because angry Alabama is coming back to town when you host a playoff game, and those goalposts won't matter, and they'll laugh at you if you just win the first one and not the second one. So I think, just to put a bow and all that we're entering this era where you really can't hide from anyone, and the best team is going to be, say what you will, but it will be a more complete system of determining the champion. And we can kind of compare that, like we talked about, to the Miami team in 01 or even some of these Nebraska teams where it's like, yeah, you guys may have gone on the road more than, like, it's weird they went on the road for top 10 matchups more than Alabama, but Georgia won't have that option. So it doesn't matter. They won't be able to not play, these big teams. And even the teams like, even the teams like an Iowa or a USC team or whatever these teams are, it's like, no, you're going to be exposed. You can't just win the Rose Bowl and lose 2 games and feel like you had an all-time season.
Can I confess something?
Please.
I'd thought a while about whether or not I want to have Texas winning a title.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I think they have the roster that's best built for it outside of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And then I pivoted and thought, do I want to be bold and have the prediction that's a little bit out there that, people are like, oh, that's interesting. That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. Oregon would have been that pick if I'd wanted to go in that direction. And then I just came back to why would I not pick Georgia? Why would I not pick Georgia this year? Let's acknowledge all those things that I brought up. Am I only going to not pick Georgia because of the preseason AP number 1 stat? Is that going to be my reason? Because that's kind of thin. It would add to the accomplishment if they're able to do it, understanding how rare that has been. So that was kind of my mindset with all of this. I knew I couldn't pick Ohio State to win a national championship because I think I've done that 4 times in the last 7 years or something. It was time to put that to rest.
Mm-hmm.
That means Ohio
State's
coming.
Teams are here for. Like, you'll talk to their fans. Like my guy Max Descato, he said something. He said, "Well, yeah, if this team had CJ on it, if this Ohio State team had CJ on it, they would have won the Natty." I said, "That's every Ohio State team. Every Ohio State team is if this one thing had changed, suddenly they win every award and everything is different." It's like Georgia's already done that. There's no if then. It's okay if you don't fumble the ball at the SEC championship game, you probably beat Alabama the second time, and you're the number 1 seed overall. Like, that's your one thing, and now you're in a conversation for 3 in a row. It's not, I need this guy to flip over backwards and do this. So that's kind of my thing, is like, you've already beaten that player, in a semifinal game as the clock struck 0. You've already beaten Ryan Day. You've already, done that stuff. So yeah, I think that anybody who is saying anything but Georgia is the team to beat right now is, I'm not saying necessarily chasing headlines, but trying to find something when the answer's right there in front of you, where it's like, if Ohio State, Ryan Day does kind of, break through, that would be a story. It would be the story of a la Boston Celtics. Oh my God, so crazy. The team with more resources and everyone finally won a title. This is so shocking to everyone. But that would be the story. It wouldn't be like, we expected this,
I'm okay with having Ohio State at 1.
Mm-hmm.
I won't, because I think Georgia deserves to start at that top spot.
Right.
I'm okay with it, just more so from the standpoint of like the moves they've made to address their weaknesses. I do think they have more obvious weaknesses than Georgia does. I think Ohio State's offensive line is not the world beater that it's often been. I think their secondary outside of, it's interesting. Like, I talk about the non-Malachi Starks pieces of Georgia's secondary, and with Ohio State, it's like, it's the non-Caleb Downs pieces of their secondary, and how that could be a potential issue. And I'm actually, I did like all the, with the predicting the 12-team playoff, and I mapped out the percentage chance that every team in the field would have to win a playoff game. So for Ohio State, with them being a 1 seed, I had to play it out with the 8-9 matchup,
Mm-hmm.
which is Bama is the 8 and Ole Miss is the 9.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I actually went through and I'm like, if I'm an Ohio State fan, I want Bama to win that game because the way that Ole Miss actually matches up with Ohio
Mm-hmm.
State with this really, really good, talented defensive line that could give Ohio State's offensive line some problems. And then the passing game that I've said a million things about this offseason that Ole Miss has that actually could kind of put Ohio State on its heels a bit. And so when you kind of map it out that way
Mm-hmm.
and you think to yourself, all right, well, if I could see Ohio State just on the wrong day, even with extra rest,
Losing
getting
to
clipped.
either of those teams.
Yeah.
Both
Whereas
of
with
those teams.
Georgia,
And if it was Georgia, I would be shocked. That's the key. I would be shocked. I would not be shocked if Lane Kiffin came into town and said, well, guys, I'm wearing my pants backward today. We're only going to throw 50-yard bombs. And Ryan Day's like, oh, and they just
yeah,
loses by 30 points. And
yeah.
it's like, oh, wait, no, we know exactly how this was after 3 plays. We knew exactly how this was going to go. And that's exactly what I'm saying is that it's like, at this point, Georgia is that team. So, like, I see what you're saying. You have Georgia at 1. I will go ahead and say, hey, yeah, Ohio State bought a bunch of shiny new toys. And what else is new? And that's resulted in one title that I really remember. Like I said, the flag against Miami, I was 5 or 6 years old for that. I mean, they're one. And
2014. 2014.
That's what I said. They're one that I really remember.
Oh, you don't remember
2014.
my gosh, you're young.
Not that young. I was 7 or 8. You know what I'm saying?
True,
like, I'm not going to tell
true.
you I was that. I mean, that was not the Nola no call for me. It was not like, well, I know the rule book and this is that. Like, I was like, that's crazy. Was my takeaway. But like, one that I vividly can remember how it exactly happened. Like, there's been one. So like, that's what I'm saying is that they are actually bad money because they make you lose money when you bet on them. So that I don't know. It feels safe, but it's really not. Is what I'm saying there.
Ohio State is not safe.
No.
That's the only takeaway from
Yeah, just
from
because
today.
because that's the key. If we are betting them win a championship and they finish 4th, oh my God, safest money ever. But that's not what we're doing. We're betting
Yeah.
on a team, and if you would bet on LSU every year and they started at 20 some years, your money would have done better than if you bet at Ohio State every year. That's the crazy part.
There we go. Let's make it about LSU.
No, I'm just saying LSU's trash every other year, but they some years have broken through. That's exactly my point. Is that if you had bet on Georgia every year, it would have been disappointing until these last 3 years, right? Ohio State doesn't have that breakthrough, whereas Georgia does.
Georgia better in the odds,
Yeah.
better overall,
Yeah.
better path to a national championship. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's kick to Josh Snead. I've always been, like I said, just a major, major fan of SEC shorts. That is just something that on Monday morning during the season, it's just, you're going to watch it. It's great stuff. If you don't love it, that's kind of a you thing at this point. So it was fun to be able to dig into the history and kind of their process, which is truly insane. Like, it's incredible what they do with such quick turnaround to be able to crank out videos that hit at like every single time. So it was fun to be able to talk about all those things. So here is Josh Snead. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Josh Snead, the face of SEC Shorts. Josh, did you know that you are the second most popular video, not on your YouTube channel, obviously, but on our YouTube channel, like the SDS YouTube? Do you have any idea what that video could possibly be?
So it's an SDS video, like you guys made it?
It is an SDS original. It is not just ripping off one of your videos and us reacting to it and doing the things that everybody does on the internet now.
Yeah. I did something with Marler. Is it something like that?
Yeah, I think if you could really go back into the archives, you would remember that it was the 2018 SEC Media Days, and you and Marler did a roast of every SEC team just off the cuff, and it has lived on. So I mean,
Nice.
you did something extremely well. Things have gone very well for you since then. I looked at your most popular SEC Shorts video just a little comparison, and Texas being voted or Texas like wanting out of the SEC before it even joined is the most popular one with like 1.2 million views. Probably just a little bit of a different feel now. Do you have like Texas fans that are in on the joke, and are they aware that they're about to get made fun of by you on a weekly basis, even if they win a national title?
So it's been a little bit of both. So it's been there are some that already knew who we were, and they're like now excited to be part of like the video every week, or more frequently. And there are some Texas and Oklahoma fans who have just come across us for the first time with us like making fun of them, and they don't know who we are. They just think we're like randos that are just decided to start making fun of their teams, and they hate us. So the comment section, they think the people in our videos are like our family, and they're like, to put your kids in these videos to just insult our football team is pathetic. I'm like, no, that's a kid actor, and we paid her, so maybe you're right. We are pathetic.
One thing that they will learn though is like SEC fan bases, and the thing that you have done such a great job of tapping into is that SEC fan bases hate each other more than they like their own team. And that's the beauty of what you guys do is if everybody is able to be made fun of, then that's kind of the entire point. I want to dig into the roots of SEC shorts because what you guys do is so incredibly unique and challenging with being able to have topical videos that come out on a Monday morning. That's such a staple of now just SEC culture. And having that come out on a Monday morning when, you're not just iPhone with time, which is all anybody needs to post on YouTube now. You guys have like actual production and, like a plan that goes into this. Take me back into like how this idea started for you guys to start doing this.
Yeah, so it started for us with when the SEC network formed, and we had been doing uh, like an Auburn, Alabama show on like a cable access channel, and we were like, okay, we can do something. Surely we can come up with something that they'd be willing to put on air on the SEC network, and about that time, they put Feinbaum. Feinbaum was on the SEC network for like 6 hours a day or something like it was something crazy. So he needed to fill time. And so he was taking fan rants from fans and they were doing the same thing. They were just had their phones up to their face. Like you couldn't even see their whole face. It's just their eyeball. And they're like, oh, just screaming into the phone. And no shirts, never even took the time to put a shirt on. And so we were like, the bar seems pretty low here, fellas. I think we can get on TV. So we put together like a polished sketch that was basically, at the time Alabama was there was like a quarterback controversy with Jake Coker and Blake Sims. And like a typical Alabama fan, in the summertime, they were like, this Jake Coker kid is gonna light it up. And then the season started and Blake Sims was playing instead of him, and he was doing great. So then Alabama fans were like, well, yeah, of course he is. Everybody knew Blake Sims was going to be great. So that was kind of like the point of the video. And Paul like talked about it on the show. He had me call in, and he interviewed me on the radio, and everybody I worked with were like freaking out. And I was like, should I get an agent? Should I move to LA now? I've already asked my dad to be in my entourage, so I guess I have to do that now. So, um, uh, so they asked us to keep making the videos, and we did every week for a year. As you know, any good business model is you give away your product for free for a year. And at the end of that, people were looking forward to the videos. People that approached us to like actually pay us to do it. And so it kind of slowly became our job after that.
What's the
That was,
production
that was
process?
10 years ago. That was 10 years. This is our 10th year.
God, that's crazy to think about because I feel like I've been watching those videos for so long, and I went back and watched some of the older ones today, and just like kind of brought me back to that place and seeing that rise. I mean, it's truly remarkable to think about where
Was
you
your
guys started.
was the first thing you thought of like Josh's face was really fat back then? Because that's all I can think of is like, wow, my face like contracts and expands each year. And luckily it's logged on YouTube for forever. So I can just go back and see my weight fluctuate back and forth for a whole decade. It's real exciting.
I think it's more like the first thing I noticed is like how quickly the production changes. Like, and you guys were doing really good production early on. It wasn't just, like people just sitting there iPhone looking at just their
Yeah.
eyes. But
Yeah.
like I noticed like the improvements and like how smooth everything has become. And the fact that like you look at your videos now and you talk about trying to get, people to advertise and stuff like that, because ultimately that's how you monetize it. You guys
Mhm.
got freaking Kirk Herbstreit doing ads for you guys at the end of all of these. Like, how
Yeah.
surreal is it to think about where you guys started, where you were even poking fun at yourself of like, we're not credentialed to SEC Media Days. Here's an
Yeah.
uncredentialed look to now being at that place where the biggest name in college football is working with you guys.
Yeah, it's really cool. We did a presentation yesterday, just at like a corporate thing, about like the early years and where we're at now. So we've actually had to sit down and think about it. It is very surreal. It goes by, it feels like it goes by so fast, and we've been doing it for a decade now. And I could just remember being happy to like, we would take pictures of ourselves on Feinbaum and like, oh, we're on TV, this is great. And now, we've done commercials with Herb Street. It just, and we've been on like game day and the SEC Nation and all that stuff. And when it's happening, you're thinking, oh, okay, this is a great for whatever we want to do next. But then you think about like, we would have never thought that we'd be on game day when we started it. We were just kind of wanted to do something that we enjoyed doing creatively, and it's turned into whatever it is now. And it's been really, really cool.
Take me through that production process, because I don't think the average person at home like realizes how crazy your turnaround is to be able to get on location, to do all those different things that you guys do, to have some sort of a script played out. I don't know how much of it is improv, how much of it is scripted, to be able to edit it and then to have it out Monday morning like that quickly. I got to imagine you guys work pretty much around the clock, like even from Saturday once you get an idea into Sunday, and then Sunday is just pretty much like you just go until you finish.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think our production is why no one else does it the way we do it, is because it's a lot to take on. And if you want to do it like once or twice a year, that's one thing, but we have to do it 25 times a year. And that's what's kind of really difficult about it, but also kind of rewarding when you pull it off right. So we watch all the games. Saturday, we'll kick a couple ideas around like possibilities, but you never know what's going to happen after the games. Like news could break, something could happen. And so if you come up with your idea too early on a Saturday and commit to it, a coach might get fired that night after the game, or a player may say something, or something may happen in the news, and then you got to start over from scratch. So we'll kick around a few ideas while their games are going. Robert and I'll text back and forth, and then we don't pick an idea until Sunday morning when we meet. And then so that's around like 9 o'clock or so. And then we bat around ideas, we pick one, and then you just have to go all in. So we split up, and Robert will start writing a script, and I'll start like getting all the equipment together, calling actors, trying to get a location. Um, then we both will start, trying to put like props together and wardrobe, and you have essentially 15 hours to come up with an idea, write a script, find actors, find a location, go to the location, unload you have to pick up the gear, unload all the gear, set it up, film, break everything down. Robert leaves to go edit, and then 8 a.m. it has to be up. So we've got like 15 hours to do all of that. And it's an insane thing to do 25 times in a row. So it's a lot, but sometimes going in like this isn't a very good idea. Like this is probably not going to be very funny, but you've already committed and something has to be up at 8 a.m. on Monday. So you just have to try to fix it. And so sometimes there is some improv while we're shooting. Sometimes there's some rewriting, moving stuff around, but very few times have we been like, this is so terrible, we have to just start over at like 10 o'clock at night and just accept the fact that we're going to have to just keep going until 8 a.m. in the morning. And it has to be really bad, because a lot of times we're just like, well, people are just going to have to think we're not funny this week because we don't have it in us. But yeah.
Okay, what was the bad idea? There's one that stands out in your
There's
mind
been
where like
several.
we scrapped it.
There's been several. Oh, so it was, this is now was probably a long time ago, like at least 7 years ago or longer, maybe. Yeah. But it was an idea. Auburn was getting visited by the ghost of football past, and the the effects we were using, it looked so terrible, and it wasn't funny, and like the way we were doing it, because in a day you can't just like pull off whatever you can dream of. Whatever you think of has to be something that's possible to produce in a day. So I can't remember what our ideas were, but the jokes were bad. The setups were terrible. I think the premise was funny, but it just, and the effects looked bad. It was just all terrible. So we were like, it was late at night, and we were like, this is this is awful. Like we can't we can't do this. So we bailed and like ended up doing something easier. I think it was some sort of talk show idea or something. But I think even then you can see in the video like there's just bags under my eyes. I'm just like barely performing, and it's just because you got to turn in something. So uh,
It speaks to your ability, though, that even the ideas that you probably don't feel particularly good about still make the rounds always. And it's still like, oh God, like look what they did. Like literally every Monday, we always have an SEC short story on Saturday Down South, just because you guys, your hit rate is so unbelievably high. I imagine, like Lane shares your stuff or going on Feinbaum, some of these surreal experiences. What's like the one that kind of stands out where you're like, this is kind of a pinch myself type moment that they shared our content?
Bubba Sparks for sure.
There we go.
I
Okay.
was like, I did, I thought that was Marjorie Taylor Greene had shared.
All
So,
right.
yeah. So that was interesting. I think for us, like a pinch me moment was getting to work with Steve Spurrier. We both like him a lot. Like we both think he's hilarious. And so we did this video for SEC Network. It was like their 5-year anniversary. And so they asked us to do a video. And so um, we had more access to coaches and stuff that we would normally do, and we had time to actually like write something and produce it over several weeks. So we got Gus Malzahn to do. He was the coach at Auburn at the time, to do a bachelor parody where he was searching for his new quarterback, and instead of a rose, he was giving out a quarterback
I remember.
wristband. And just the fact that he agreed to do it, we were like, this is amazing. Like, why did he say yes? We could not figure out. It turns out like his wife was a big Bachelor fan and she had been making him watch it. So when we pitched the idea, he was like, oh, absolutely, I'll do it. Uh, and so we got really lucky, and he was really nice, and he went along with all the jokes, and he was really cool. And then also part of that video, we had uh, we had Spurrier as like an analyst for college games on TV. And our joke was that he just spent the whole time making fun of Tennessee because he has all these like famous like quotes about making fun of Tennessee. And so we get to the recording. It was like during media days or something. And Tom Hart's there to be his like play-by-play guy, and we have a whole green screen set up. And Spurrier gets there, and he's holding the script in his hand, and which was just filled with Tennessee jokes. And he was like, "Yeah, I don't want to say any of this." And we were like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah, Tennessee's my third favorite team." We're like, "What? Who has a third favorite team?" And also, making fun of Tennessee is what you do for fun in your spare time. And so he was like, "Don't worry though, I got you something. I got you something." And so we just hit record, and he was like, "Yeah, looking forward to what Tennessee's got out there today. Think they got a real good team." We were like, that's the opposite of what we wanted, but we were just so happy to be in the same room with him. We were like, thanks, Steve. And he left, and we didn't use it. It never aired. And Archie Manning ended up recording that same bit, but it was like a different joke. It wasn't making fun of Tennessee. It was like Tom Hart had a joke about watching Tua play, and he's like, I've never seen anyone throw and run like this ever before. And Archie was like, are you serious? I mean, he's like, took it as a joke. Anyway, Archie saved us. He was great. And we never used the Spurrier thing, but we were just so happy to have like even done anything with him that, we still look at it fondly, I guess.
That's incredible. And Spurrier, like just pulling a total 180 at the last minute, just had to throw you off
Oh,
in every
here's
way.
my favorite. Yeah, here's my favorite part. The next day, because he was there for media day coverage, because they had just done like the documentary, and the next day, someone at media days asked him about Tennessee, and he rattled for like 5 minutes on like they're terrible. Of course, they're not. And we're like, why, Steve? Why us? It's because he had never heard of us, I'm sure, and was like, why do I care about making jokes for these guys? Like, who cares? Like he didn't want to take the risk. He wants to. I think the way Alyssa Lang described it to us, because after he left, we were like, what happened? I don't know what she was like. Well, he wants to do it on his own. He doesn't want you to like make the difference.
He knows the audience he controls, how that always goes.
I mean, and in his defense, he's won a national championship, and we are two dorks from the internet. Like, make a joke for us, Steve. So
Okay, so I got to imagine there's also been the one where like somebody's giving you a call, somebody's giving you a call of like, hey, you guys crossed the line or something like that, or like somebody behind closed doors was like, can you guys like be like take it easy on this or something like that? Which is there a story like that that stands out?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we for 4 years we worked for ESPN, and we would do separate sketches during the middle of the week for SEC Nation that would air Saturday morning during their show. And we had a video one year that was it was a meeting for a support group for all the bad teams in the SEC. So you go around the circle, it's just the five terrible teams, and they're just talking positively about like how they're gonna, get better. And so it aired, and every athletic director or whatever who had a team in that video called the conference, who in which called the network to say, why would you guys air this? This is terrible. Like, they said stuff like this will affect recruiting. Like 18-year-olds are watching SEC Nation at 8 a.m. Like, well, I wasn't sure until now, but since SEC Shorts made fun of, Tennessee or whoever. But yeah, they were all very upset. Another one was we made another video for ESPN where Kentucky was having like this great year. I can't remember.
2018?
18, yes. And so we were making all these like positive Kentucky football videos, which was very hard for us. We didn't even have the Kentucky gear, I don't think, at the time. We had to go buy stuff. And but it was very exciting because you're always happy for a team that's doing, like, their fans are like through the roof because they're about to win 10 games, and that's never happened. And they're just like super excited. So we're happy to be making all these videos. So we make one that's like Kentucky's a football school, and now their basketball team, it was a commercial uh to like raise money for the basketball team because they're a football school now. So it's the basketball players doing car washes, asking for like donations. And, we just found the two tallest people we knew. And, they're just like holding up signs and doing. And so it aired on TV, and ESPN cleared it and they were fine with it. But Mark Stoops saw it and was like, how could you do this to us? And they were like, what do you mean? And apparently, I guess the football and basketball departments didn't get along great at the time, so he wasn't super pumped about it. But I'm sure it's fine now. Cal's gone, and he's Stoops is doing great, so I'm sure it's all fine now. This was like years and years ago. So.
Sensitive subject to this day, very
Yeah.
much. Josh, last one for you. What's the future of SEC shorts? Can we get like SEC longs, just like 20-minute feature films? I'm not like just in the off season, because obviously like your workload during the season is crazy, and you talk about the turnaround, but like 20-minute feature films, SEC longs, I like those numbers would be insane.
Uh, um, that would be interesting. That would be fun. I think we pitched an idea to SEC Network early on to let us have like a kickoff show before the season starts that would have a bunch of like a Key and Peele situation where it's a bunch of different sketches pushed all in to one show. We wanted to make it kind of like a variety show where you would have like sketches, we'd have Hannah sing a song and do a bunch of different stuff like that. And they were not interested, but so we've turned that idea into a live show that we do throughout the year, sometimes in the off season. But this year we're doing two in the fall. So we're gonna announce those here pretty quick. So that's what we do now. We kind of when we're not making videos, we like to do these live shows. So I hope everybody gets a chance to make it out to one. So in this fall, they're going to be Fridays before games. We're going to do some for a couple different towns and stuff before big games. But it's just an hour and a half of sketches. We do audience games. Hannah sings a song that we wrote. There's stand up. There's all kinds of stuff in it. So it's like a old timey like vaudeville variety show, but but for college football and written specifically for your team.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I remember you guys did one in College Station last year.
We did. That
Yeah.
was awesome. College Station is crazy. Their fans are insane. The traditions they have there, just the ones you know about now on the surface, you're like, that's kind of weird. Then you get there and it's 1,000 times weirder than you think, but they're so great. They're so sweet and like they're excited to be a part of, SEC shorts making fun of them, and they're good sports about the jokes, and it was a really fun, amazing experience for sure.
Texas
And
and
if you ever get a chance to go to Midnight Yell, please go. I'm sure you been?
I have not been. That's on my bucket list. I need to be able to get out there one day.
It's insane. Nothing prepares you to see what you will see. And what everyone sees are the stuff that's out now, like the Yell leaders doing their, I forget what they call it. It's like a monologue, but I don't know if they call it a monologue or not, but that's what everyone sees, the little 5-minute clips of them telling like corny jokes. But the Midnight Yell is like it's like an hour or two long. And there's the most insane stuff you've ever seen going on all around you all at once. You just have to go. You have to see it to believe it. It's insane.
The
And
unique traditions in this conference, man, never ceases to amaze.
while we were there and we're at College Station, we're at Midnight Yell, we got to like stand on the field to watch all the stuff going on. And this one guy is taking us around. Someone introduced us to him and they're like, he's gonna host you for tonight. So he's walking us around on the field to places where like people shouldn't be, like in the stuff. And we're like, who is this? He was an astronaut. And no one was like, hey, this astronaut's gonna show you around. He's been on the moon, by the way. He never mentioned it. No one ever said anything. We had to look him up after because we were like, who was this guy? He was great. And he was an astronaut. He was just like, Texas State, like, just never came up that he had been to the moon. If I have been to the moon, it would be the only thing I talked about to anyone ever. But this guy loves Aggie football so much that he just never even thought to like, yeah, I've been to, this reminds me of being on the moon. Like I would work it into every conversation I had, and he's just like never brought it up.
Hi, nice to meet you, Josh Snead. I went to the moon.
Yeah, you may recognize me from the moon. Oh, you've never been there? That's crazy.
You know that thing that comes out every single night, the moon. You've probably seen it before. I've been there. No big deal.
I've walked on it,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Just
Kind of
casual.
a space mechanic for a while.
No big deal. Josh, this is awesome, man. Really appreciate the time. Hopefully, I'm going to get to see you at some point here. You're going to be in Dallas for SEC Media Days?
No, so the only media days we've been to were the ones where they wouldn't let us into for fun. Other than that, we're making a video this Sunday that we'll post, I think, July 8th, Monday morning. That's going to be like a Texas, Oklahoma being welcome to the SEC video. Then we're going to do another couple off-season stuff, and then get cranking for the season. So we're excited.
I'll be here before we know it. Josh, great stuff, man. We'll do it again sometime.
All right. Thanks.
Let's close with some lad of the week. Will, why don't you, actually, you know what? Mine's going to be very deep into the weeds, college football type stuff. So why don't you start?
Yeah, so mine's pretty easy. I feel like I've been getting a little bit too sappy lately, so I'm just gonna make this one very bread and butter, blocking and tackling, as we say. Paul Skeens, man, my guy. It's always nice when you can be a little bit of a homer and it pays off, right? Got to see him in person for the first time, in Atlanta watching against the Braves, and it was so sick. Like this is my exact style of pitcher. Like we've talked about the two different like kind of styles of pitcher, right? Where there's like the Maddox on one side with the control. Skeens is like watching a medieval siege engine just destroy a castle. It's like watching House of the Dragon. It's like watching a dragon blow up a castle. And it's so funny because in two back-to-back starts, so it was the first pitch that got taken out of the yard in the game before the Atlanta game, and then in the Atlanta game, the first batter hit a home run. And I was there with my girlfriend Andre, and I looked at her and I was like, "Here's the thing: he just gives up home runs, and then it's just fine." And it's the craziest thing that every pitch is that outcome. It's either this is kind of like Max Scherzer was one of my favorite baseball players ever. He's like that with more velocity. It's the most nuts thing. 6'6" right-hander. If you guys haven't been keeping up with him, but the way that he can throw these insane like middle of the fifth inning about to wrap up his day of work, 100-mile-an-hour fastball for a strikeout that they can't even get near. So yeah, he was named to the All-Star team. First rookie pitcher to ever be named an All-Star, which is crazy. I believe he actually is starting. I think they're still working through that. But the thing that actually blew my mind is the first time in MLB history that for 9 of a pitcher's first 10 starts, they had double-digit strikeouts. That is nutso. So the fact that, again, kind of a cheat code because he came through the Air Force Academy, transferred to LSU. So he's a little bit older than most rookies, certainly a bit bigger. But the concept is kind of like Zion, where it's like, surely major league hitting will catch up to this guy. No, it turns out if you could just throw 103 in the third inning, people are not used to that.
My father-in-law is a big Pirates fan.
Mm-hmm.
We text baseball a lot. That's usually where most of my baseball consumption is filtered through these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying to him, because he's already worried about when he's going to leave for the Yankees or something. As sad as it is, that's the life of a small market Major League Baseball fan. And I said to him, I think he's going to be easily better than any Cubs pitcher in my lifetime, which is depressing because if you're going to include Maddox, you have to include Maddox when he was on the Cubs and stuff, which he was really good. But
right,
Skeen's going to win Cy Young. I wouldn't bet against it at this point. Not this year, probably, but still, like that seems inevitable. And you kind of think about it in those terms, and you realize, oh yeah, this guy's pretty freaking special, and you cherish every single year start that you have with him. Like I miss that. That's kind of the fun, unique thing about baseball of like you could be a diehard fan and there are certain games where like I remember when I first got down to Orlando and I had like the MLB radio subscription and stuff like that. And I would listen to every single like most every Cubs game. But when it was peak Jake Arrieta, that's when I listened. I was like, I'm going to make sure that, maybe I can get some work done early or something like that, or I will have that on while I'm doing something. It is appointment listening to me. Yeah, I was a little bit old fashioned with radio, whatever. It's like $19 for the year. It was worth it. And Skeens is now easily already that guy. Like if you ask me, what are the odds I'm going to watch the MLB All-Star game? Probably not great, but with him pitching, I'm like, I want to be able to see that. We'll be, in Dallas, albeit a half hour away. I'm sure a lot of people will want to venture because Skeens will be there and he'll be on the bump, and that's cool. Baseball needs more of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so crazy too watching a guy like we talked about figuring it out and stuff. How he was kind of just like had like ROTC guy vibes, like big smile, kind of like it was just he seemed like he was just being like kind of stopping off before his like service career, and then you could just see every year him getting cooler. Like just him being like, like it's like watching an anime character come to terms with their superpowers. And the thing that's so funny too, I already compared him to like one of the dragons in House of Dragon, but how well their offense does when he pitches. That's like he's been in line for a ton of wins because it's like, I got this thing on my side. I'm going to swing for the fences, buddy. We're going to be fine. And just the way that this really middling Pirates offense becomes a pretty solid team against good teams where it's like, oh, wait, you're not going to be able to hit our guy and we are going to be able to hit your guy. So yeah, I'm right there with you. It's appointment viewing for sure.
What a feeling, man. What a feeling. Just let it rip every single time. We're not shortening up on 2 strikes. Screw that. No, Skeens is on the bump today. We're good. We can strike out.
It's over for you, buddy.
Oh, gosh. All right, mine's going into the weeds. Ryan Bamford, the UMass AD. Okay? If you saw the video on Twitter from GFed Go Crazy, didn't get his actual name, does like college football stadium tours on TikTok and stuff like that. If you saw the video, you know what I'm getting at here. He tweeted this video of UMass's football stadium, and that place is so forgettable. I've had to watch the video like 3 or 4 times to remind myself of the structures that are actually in place there, because it's bad. If you just said this is actually a random high school in the Northeast, nobody would push back at all. Okay. And I did like a little bit of like the Wikipedia digging around just because I had to see the story of the stadium. They got lights in 2008, which was the same year that my high school got lights as the last team in our conference to get lights in high school. all bleacher seats, not even real concourses. It's just the most nothing burger stadium that you'll ever see. And it'll come as no surprise that I shouldn't say no. Core 4 teams aren't exactly lining up to be able to go there. But
Our guy.
there is one Core 4 team who agreed to go to UMass to play an organized game of tackle football there, and that is Mizzou.
Yep.
An SEC team who could very likely be undefeated and in the top 10 could be playing actual football at this place. Luther Burden III is going to walk on that field. And I'll just say it so he doesn't have to, or nobody at Mizzou has to say it. That man is too good for that. Okay? He is too good to be on that field. I think the pre-2023 version of Brady Cook is too good for that field. All right? So how did this deal come to be? Where did our guy Ryan Bamford factor into all of this? Okay?
Yeah.
If you remember from a pod that we did in December with SEC schedule superlatives.
This is one of my favorite wormholes that we go on is how they love sickos at UMass. Let's do it.
I've spent so much time and energy digging into this and reading stories about it because it's fascinating. I'm not saying I'm going to write a book about this, but my gosh. Okay, so Ryan Bamford, the UMass AD, pitched to then Mizzou AD Jim Sturk back in 2019. And this pitch was a masterclass. He tells Mizzou, look, we're an independent. You guys do not want to do what Georgia and Auburn do to be able to play us, which is pay us $1.9 million to get your automatic win. Okay, that's what both of those teams did. You, Mizzou, have 2 spots that you need to fill in 2024 and 2025. We are an independent. We have flexibility. We can make this happen. You name a date, we're there. We'll do it. Save some money. Come up to UMass in 2024. Let's help each other. And for whatever reason, Jim Sturk, he gets bullied into doing this and not playing at Gillette, where usually they play teams like Boston College or something like this, which is 100 miles away from their campus.
Say. They couldn't even get in Gillette Stadium.
They couldn't even do that. As the story goes in the Daily Hampshire Gazette, support local journalism, Ryan Bamford talked to a former UMass employee who worked at Mizzou, and he got them to vouch for the facilities and the plans to upgrade the UMass stadium. He got an employee who used to work there to be like, "Yo, man, it's good. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Just sign on the dotted line, make this happen." Ryan Bamford rules, okay? I said before, I'll say it again. I want that guy negotiating my next contract. I would love that. I really would. Why is he also noteworthy right now? He got UMass into the MAC for 2025. Starting in the 2025 school year, UMass will be a member of the Mid-American Conference, okay? As in the conference that had not had a team join since Buffalo in 1998. He got his program into a conference that has an actual identity and will have games on ESPN in the middle of the week that we call Maction. And we'll be able to flip on UMass on a Tuesday night and see this team play football in that stadium. And here's the crazy thing. They did a major stadium renovation in 2011 when they announced they were going to be joining FBS, a move that was kind of scrutinized. So this was the renovation that they did just to get to FBS standards. And this is what their stadium looks like. Yet Ryan Bamford, 8 years after all of that, was like, "Hey, Mizzou, we're going to upgrade this thing by the time you have to come here." And he pulls it off. That's incredible. You know those people that could just sell you anything? I always think this is fascinating. Ryan Bamford has been selling, he sold lemonade as a kid for $20 a cup. I'm convinced. That there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. That guy did not have a penny of student loan debt by the time he graduated college because he just hustled and find ways to be able to talk people into giving him money. There's zero doubt. Game of the year, October 12th, 2024. Mizzou at UMass. Mizzou is going to be playing a game at Kyle Field one Saturday, and the following Saturday it'll be playing at UMass. All because Ryan Bamford, easy lad of the week.
So this guy, again, this is one of my favorite rabbit holes. This guy looks very young. Like let's call it late 30s, early 40s. And I clicked on his Wikipedia, and what it looks like, he took over the job in 2015 at UMass, and the first thing he did was raise a banner honoring Calipari, who got them in trouble. And I love you, Ryan Bamford. Because you raised a banner for Calipari instead of erasing and pretending like that didn't happen. You know, like who could forget? You know, Marcus Camby and those boys love that, generated a lot of buzz, which is what your job is. And then you were able to move your university into the FBS and into the back the following year. Like the concept of what's up?
Time heals all wounds, Will.
Yes. Yes, and it had been, decades before that. This guy showed up and was just like, bleep it, we ball. Like from day one was like, I'm going to generate headlines. I'm going to move us up. I'm going to do this. This is the classic, like you're just home to dumb going through your day as like the Mizzou athletic director. You're like, yeah, let's just call UMass. And it's like, what's that guy on, huh? And it's like, wait, you look back, it's like, I may have made a horrible mistake here. This guy at UMass I did not read the scouting report on him.
I just want to go back in time and find when Jim Sturck hung the phone up that day and he thought, what just happened to me? I just signed my life away. This was a horrible, horrible deal. Why in the world is Mizzou playing here? It makes no sense whatsoever. And I just like, I don't know. I'm not trying to get political or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? Let's get some ideas going. Let's everybody groupthink, okay? Let's make this happen. All right.
This is the perfect American to celebrate on the 4th of July week, which is that this guy just said, you know what? This is how things used to be done. No taxation without representation. No, I'm not going to show up to your football stadium to get blown out. I'm going to do it this way. Everybody else, kind of like the colonies, were like, all right, dude, what? Oh, no. This is now a big problem. And you know what? You're a great American this week. You were an independent. You used that leverage. Coming into an SEC school like the Godfather and be like, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. It's like, okay, man, you got it.
If we find out 5 years from now that Ryan Bamford is in prison and he had identity theft issues, I'm not going to say that I'm going to be stunned.
Yeah.
But I'll be waiting on him to talk his way out of it, find a way to show that he didn't get a fair trial. His lawyer was inept. And there's no way that he should be serving this time. And then he's going to find a way to be out and selling something and just keeping it moving. That's the Ryan Bamford way. So seeing this stadium, I was imagining
Leo as Jordan Belfort when I looked him up, and he kind of fits. Like he kind of fit. Hit him up. See if we can get him on the podcast. I mean, come on, let's do it.
I may or may not have, but definitely did start following him on Twitter an hour before we started recording. So
yeah,
TBD. We'll do what we can.
Interview with like the keys to your car. You'd be like, "Where'd those go? What?" He like pulls them up from behind his ear.
Like, just did he just divorce my wife for me? What? How did Ryan Bamford do this? Unbelievable.
You can't keep getting away with this, Ryan Bamford. Also, if you're unhappy with your AD as an SEC guy, there's the top of the list right here. Because whatever you need him to do, he can do it.
This man is making moves. Look, South Carolina, I'm just saying. Mizzou's kind of had your number a little bit recently. You want somebody that's got Mizzou's number, call up Ryan Bamford.
He'll make it happen. Man.
All right. If you haven't, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.